What is the most important organ? Then, what is there after kidney? Ureter. Then, urinary bladder and urethra. Okay. So, if there is infection or inflammation in any of these organs, we refer to as urinary tract infection. Okay. By definition, it is the disease caused by microbial invasion of the urinary tract. Is urinary tract sterile? It is considered sterile except lower parts of urethra, okay, which has common commensal flora of its own. So when this urinary tract syndrome we are talking about, we differentiate it based on the anatomical region it is involving. So what will you see? Lower UTI and upper UTI. Lower UTI will have which sites involved? Urethra and bladder. And upper UTI, kidney and urethra. Okay. What are the clinical manifestations? As you see, upper UTI means extended infection. It could be through ascending route. It could be after lower UTI, the infection has gone above and infected other parts of urinary tract. Or else there is primary site of infection in somewhere else in the body and hematogenous seeding of organism has happened. So there will be hematogenous spread of organism to upper UTI tract. What kind of local infections local manifestations you will see here? Pain, right? You can suffer with the abdominal pain, you can have fever, you can have vomiting, nausea, okay? But in case of lower UTI, you will have some localized manifestations such as burning maturation, right? Such as frequency, increased frequency, dysuria, pain while urination, and urgency, inability to hold the urine, okay? All these are related to lower UTI. Route of spread we have already discussed, it's ascending in case of lower UTI, it could be hematogenous in case of upper UTI, okay? But other than this classification, this UTI can also be depending on the location. Like if a patient got admitted in the hospital and underwent certain instrumentation, such as the patient was, such as you put the catheter in the patient, urinary catheter, and the patient developed fever and you took the urine sample and you saw that there is the growth of pathogenic organism more than 10 to power 5, significant colony growth. After 48 hours, you can say that it is because of the catheterization. So we will render it as CAUTI, catheter associated urinary tract infection, which is a major healthcare associated infection out of all the HAIs we will study, right? So CAUTI is the most common one, okay? Because most commonly, what kind of instrumentation you are doing other than the ventilator and central line, most of the patients, even the patients undergoing surgery, even in pregnancy, all these patients we are putting urinary catheter, so they'll catch this CAUTI. The chance is more. Okay, and then there is community acquired. The patients who come to you in the OPD basis. Okay, the patients who come to you with the primary complaints of urinary tract infections. Okay, so we are classifying it based on anatomical side and we are classifying it based on the source of infection. Okay, then there are certain predisposing factors. There are certain predisposing factors to all the diseases. In case of UTI, what are these factors? Higher prevalence is seen in females. What is the reason? Because females have shorter urethra and it has the close proximity to anus. So in anus there are very many commensal organisms that might cause infection in the urinary tract. Very good example is Morganella. Okay. Age. Incidence will increase with the age. Also in case of infants you will see that UTI is common. Then in pregnancy, anatomical and hormonal changes are there. And in pregnancy, there is something called as asymptomatic bacteriuria. Means there are no symptoms, but infection is there. How will you know that? presence of pus and significant microbial pathogenic growth. Okay. Then if there is certain structural and functional abnormality of urinary tract, how did this happen? Structural obstruction could be there. You all know of kidney stones, right? We know of urethral stricture. This might happen during any surgery or any other previous infection with any parasite. It can lead to urethral stricture. Prostate enlargement in case of males, or any tumors, or you had the renal transplant, again patient underwent surgery. So these are all causes for structural obstruction, or it could be due to functional obstruction. Certain diseases that involve the nervous degeneration or nervous dysfunction, so such as neurogenic bladder, that was because of the spinal cord injury or multiple sclerosis. This is because of functional dysfunction of nerves. Okay. Then certain bacteria whose virulence factor are way enhanced than the other bacterium, which help them in adhesion to the uroepithelium through the help of pili. These bacterium, they have this pili which helps in the adhesion to the urinary tract epithelium. Okay. Or vesicoureteric reflux. By reflux, what do you mean? The urine is not flowing downwards, it's going upwards. So the area which was sterile, it will not be sterile after this, right? The reflux is there. The commensal flora, they might go in the urine, they'll go up. Okay. And genetic predisposition can also be seen. These are all predisposing factors for the UTI. Okay. Okay. Coming to etiology, to enumerate, there are n number of causative organisms which can cause urinary tract infection. Out of this, bacterial agents are more, right? So just remember, in fungus, the commonest one is Candida. Okay. In parasites, in the class of bloodstream infections and gastrointestinal infections, we had studied about Schistosomia, Mansonia and Japonicum. In that class, I had told you that there is Schistosoma hematobium, whose habitat is a bladder. So in this case, the parasite Schistosoma Trichomonas vaginalis, which appears in the trophozoite form, and this fluke, this nematode, this can cause UTI. Okay. And there is certain viruses, BK virus and adenovirus. BK virus is named after the first patient, okay, in which person this virus was discovered. These are the initials of that man. Okay, so we call it BK virus. It is common in the patients with transplant who underwent renal transplant. Okay, and adenovirus types 11 and 21. These are known to commonly cause UTI. Okay, then coming to bacterial agents. Now, gram-negative bacilli, uropathogenic Escherichia coli is the most common Enterobacteriaceae family bacterium which can cause UTI. Okay. Other than this, what can you see? Klebsiella, Enterobacter, Proteus, Serratia, and non-fermenters such as Pseudomonas or Acinetobacter. Other than this, there are other non-fermenters which belong to the Protei group, Providentia, Proteus, and Morganella, which can also cause UTI. Okay. Then gram-positive bacilli, acid-fast bacilli, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It can also cause UTI. And gram-positive cocci, Enterococcus, Staphylococcus saprophyticus. Staphylococcus saprophyticus is very common in reproductive age female group. Okay. Staphylococcus aureus, Staphylococcus epidermidis is a cons, but it can also cause this infection, and Streptococcus aegypti. When we are dealing about Streptococcus aegypti, what is the risk here? If it's during the labor and a mother is carrying this organism, she can transfer it to the she can transfer it to the newborn, okay, and he can get infected with this and it can cause meningitis, okay. This is the common picture of etiological agents in UTI. Just remember it like this. Fungus, Candida albicans, parasite, Schistosoma hematobium, Trichomonas vaginalis, viruses, BK virus and adenovirus, and here gram-negative bacilli, so you can write gram-positive cocci, you have to remember, okay. Now, since it's a urinary tract, you know that urine is acidic. So, how do these organisms survive in this? So, these organisms might have certain enzymes that is helping them to survive, right? So, this is considered into host defense mechanism. There are two kinds of host defense mechanism. One is urinary factor. The urine itself is acting as a host defense mechanism. And one is mucosal immunity. You know about mucosal immunity, which antibody is secreted here? Which IgA, okay. So, in urinary factor, what do we discuss? Urine is acidic, so inhibits the growth of pathogens, okay. It has high urine osmolality and it does not let the bacterial adherence happen. So, these factors will help you with the bacterial inhibition, but also as urine is flushed through the urethra, like so this mechanism is also not letting the bacteria accumulate, okay. Then in mucosal immunity, your uroepithelial system secretes certain cytokines, okay, that are induced by bacterial LPS. What is LPS? Lipopolysaccharides, okay. Then we have mucosal IgA, as you told that this antibodies are released in the mucosa, okay. And in men, we have zinc in the prostatic secretion, that will also help them. Also, long urethra, unlike females who are more prone to the UTI, okay. And there is some certain glycoprotein which is secreted by kidney. It serves as anti-adherence factor for E. coli, okay. These are all the host defense mechanism for UTIs. Now, how can you differentiate? We are talking about the syndromes. Collectively, you are talking about the syndromes when you say lower UTI. What will you discuss in lower UTI? What are the things that could happen? First thing is asymptomatic bacteriuria. I told you it is very common in pregnancy. Cystitis means inflammation of the urinary bladder, okay. Then urethritis and acute urethral syndrome, also seen in young people, okay. So, this is lower UTI we are talking about. In upper UTI, what will you have? Pyelonephritis, renal pelvis is involved, renal parenchyma is involved, ureteritis, ureters are involved, perinephric abscess, the name suggests itself, renal abscess and renal TB. So, this will give you the idea that this could be due to hematogenous spread also, right? And there is something called as immunological sequel, which is post-streptococcal glomerulonephritis. This is almost equal to what? Acute rheumatic fever. We have studied acute rheumatic fever, but this is not as severe as ARH, okay? Coming to the first subtype, which is asymptomatic bacteriuria. What is happening here? Quantitative count of bacteria is in an appropriately collected urine specimen obtained from person without symptoms of UTI. Then why are you collecting this urine sample? If the patient has no symptoms, why are you collecting the urine sample? Because this asymptomatic bacteriuria is clinically significant in which cases? Pregnant women, right? People who are undergoing prostatic surgery or urological procedures. It means there would be bleeding. So, if there is bleeding is anticipated, you have to treat this asymptomatic bacteriuria. Because what will happen? there could be hematogenous spread to other sites because of this, right? So we have to treat this asymptomatic bacteriuria. Coming to cystitis. Cystitis का symptoms क्या है? Dysuria, frequency, urgency and suprapubic tenderness. Okay. Now you will see there is no associated systemic manifestations, but this itself is very, the patient will come to you with all these complaints. You have to collect the urine sample and find out the pathogenic organism and treat. Okay. Coming to acute urethral syndrome. It is common in sexually active females. Okay. Bacterial count is often low, but clinical symptoms will persist. They are same as the cystitis. Okay, this is acute urethral syndrome. Here you are discussing that even the bacterial count is lower. Even then, symptoms are there and you have to treat it for agents such as other than the common etiological agents that you see for UTI. So after this class, we'll be studying STI syndromic management. In that you will see that these are all the causative organisms such as gonococcus, chlamydia, herpes. These are the causative organisms for acute urethral syndrome. Okay. Now upper UTI, we discussed inflammation of kidney parenchyma, callisis and renal pelvis. What is happening here? Fever, flank pain, vomiting, nausea, all this occurs. And you will take specimen. Now urine collection for all this is same. Does not matter if it's lower UTI or upper UTI, except if the patient is undergoing surgery, urological procedures, then urine could be directly collected from the urinary tract. But on the OPT basis or any other way, if you are collecting urine, you have to collect the clean catch midstream urine in sterile screw capped container, right? Then what will you do? How long can you preserve the specimen? You have to transport it to the laboratory as soon as possible. If you have to store it, you can store it in the refrigerator. Urine sample from urinary bag. You have to always clamp the catheter and take the urine from either if there is a port present on the urinary catheter or along with the help of needle and syringe. Okay. These catheters seal themselves after you have taken the sample. Okay. That's how you collect the urinary sample from catheters. Now, when you have collected this sample, we perform certain screening tests that will give you the idea if there is infection. What are these screening tests? We perform wet mount of this urine. So you will be able to see more than 7 pus cells per mm cube. That is the first requisite. If it is there, it means that there is a pyuria. Okay. Then you can go for leukocyte esterase test. This is certain enzyme that is secreted by the leukocytes. Then there is nitrate reduction test. This is seen for presence of Enterobacteriaceae. Why? Because they convert this nitrate to nitrite, right? And you can perform gram staining. In case of upper UTI, if there is presence of one bacterium per oil immersion field, you can be certain that there is a urinary tract infection. Okay, these are all screenings. Then what culture media do you use for urine samples? You can use McConkey agar and blood agar, but there is also a very good selective media which is CLED agar, cysteine lactose electrolyte deficient agar. Okay, in this agar, you will see that lactose fermenting colonies will show yellow pigmentation, okay, yellow color, and non-lactose will show green, light green, pale, okay, color. Then there is something called as CAS concept of significant bacteriuria. It is based on the fact that though normal urine is sterile, it may get contaminated during voiding. So when there is low count, low bacterial colony forming unit count, we do not consider it significant, except in certain cases such as acute urethral syndrome. I told you this is the exception. Okay, so significant colony count also matters. It has to be 10 to the power more than 5. Okay. This is a general table showing culture identification features of common organisms. I told you uropathogenic E. coli. E. coli, you know that it is lactose fermenting colonies on McConkey, grey moist colonies on bladder. It is gram-negative bacilli, which is motile, and catalase positive, oxidase negative. What biochemical reactions will it show? It will show you indole and methyl red positive, citrate and urease negative, right? In TSI slant, what will you see? Which reaction will you see? A by A, no H2S, no gas. Okay. Gas could be present, but in very small amount. On contrast to this, gas is abundantly present in which organism? Klebsiella. Okay. Klebsiella also has the almost same features except that it gives McCoid colonies. It also is urease and citrate positive, indole negative, methyl red negative, and acidic slant, acidic butt, gas present, H2S absent, gas present abundantly. Okay. Proteus species we discussed about, we'll see that in detail further. What are certain etiological agents? I told you the uropathogenic E. coli is there, accounts for 70% of all the UTI cases, right? What are the virulence factors here? Just remember it like this: cytotoxins, hemolysins, fimbriae, and capsular K antigens. This much is enough to remember. Okay. Klebsiella pneumoniae is also a commensal in human intestine. So this can also cause infections. Same as E. coli. E. coli is also a commensal in human intestine. This Klebsiella is capable of causing these other infections which you have studied by now. So you must be knowing how to diagnose Klebsiella in the laboratory. What kind of colonies does it show on the agar? What biochemical reactions are there, if it's catalase positive, oxidase negative, and what is there on TSI slant. Okay, this much you have to remember about the organisms. Then there is Enterobacter species which are also implicated. Then there is Citrobacter species. There are two special species, Citrobacter fruendi and Cosseri. These are also equally seen in UTI infections. Coming to Protei infection, I told you about this Protei family. There are 3 genera in this: Proteus, Morganella, and Providentia. They have the specific test that differentiates them from other non-fermenters, that is phenylalanine diamine test. What is happening here? This amino acid is being converted into phenylpyruvic acid through the enzyme that is present in these bacterium. Okay. So we are differentiating them based on this. How will the positive test look? You add ferric chloride to the slant and it will show you green color. When there is green color formation, it means this test is positive. Okay. Now, Proteus is also named based upon H and O antigen. By now you know that H antigen stands for flagella, O antigen stands for somatic antigen. But in case of Proteus, when you talk about H antigen, the Proteus which is capable of forming a thin film on the agar is H Proteus, which is not capable of causing this is O Proteus, which is based on the German name Hauch. Hauch means film of breath, and ohne Hauch means no film of breath. So there is little discrepancy about this. Okay. Other than this, you studied in rickettsial infections, you studied about proteus organism that we use proteus antigen to diagnose antibody in rickettsial patients. What were the antibodies against? What were the antigens? OX19, 2 and K. Okay. So in laboratory, whenever you see a proteus colony on the agar, दूर से पता चल जाएगा it's proteus. Why? Because of this putrid, fishy, seminal odor in the culture. You just open the plate and you will have this fishy odor coming out from the organism. Okay. Also, you will see that there is swarming. The swarming that I showed you in this picture. This thing is known as swarming. This is not how the colonies look, right? This is swarming across the plate. This is proteus for you. Okay. This is how the swarming looks. This organism is catalase positive, oxidase negative. Indole is the discriminatory test for Proteus vulgaris and Proteus mirabilis. VIP, vulgaris, indole positive, VIP. Okay, indole is positive for vulgaris and negative for mirabilis. Okay, that's how you remember. Citrate could be variable, it could be positive or negative, but urease test is positive. And TSI shows H2S presence. It is K by A gas variably present. It could be present absent, but H2S spec could be seen in case of Proteus. Where else do you see H2S presence? Where else do you see hydrogen sulfide gas? Which organism? Positive organism of enteric fever. What do you see in Salmonella typhi? You see the speck of H2S presence. In case of paratyphi A, okay. We were talking about Morganella morgani. It is found in human and animal species, right? So it can cause UTI, pneumonia and wound infections. These infections are mostly nosocomial, related to hospital acquired. Okay. Providentia same, there are certain species that you have to remember. Then there are certain non-fermenters that can cause UTI, but mostly these are associated with CORTI, associated with the healthcare associated infections. Coming to gram-positive cocci. Till now, whatever cocci you have mentioned, Staphylococcus's name will come. Okay, in the beginning I told you about Staphylococcus staphylococcus, right? Epidermidis, what else? Saprophyticus and Agalacti. Very good. Is that the Staphylococcus? Streptococcus, Agalacti. Okay. Then coming to Enterococcus, right? Enterococcus was initially grouped under group D Streptococcus, but it is now separate genus. What is the one test that differentiates Micrococci from Streptococci? What is that test? Catalase test, right? When you talk about Enterococcus, you can see that Enterococcus is present in pairs. And this Enterococcus size that you are seeing here, it could be variable. It could be very small or it could be large like this. It's not necessarily that when you see it in the culture or when you see it in the direct specimen, they will appear as the same as given here, okay? On blood agar, what will you see? This translucent non-hemolytic colonies, small colonies, and it is bile aspline test positive. This is a very significant test. Okay, this is all about Enterococcus. These things that you have to mention about Enterococcus. What are the clinical manifestations that Enterococcus cause? Of course, we are talking about UTI. So there will be UTI, there will be chronic prostatitis in males, and intra-abdominal infections. Intra-abdominal infections, whenever you talk about intra-abdominal infections, you talk about Enterococcus. Enterococcus also has affinity to survive in bile. Okay, so your biliary tract may have Enterococcus as a commensal flora. And if there is a breach in this tract, these Enterococcus can cause further infection in the abdomen. So Enterococcus is implicated very commonly in intra-abdominal or pelvic infections. Okay. Other gram-positive cocci, you already told me. Then PSGN we discussed at the beginning. Then renal tuberculosis and perinephric renal abscesses. The laboratory diagnosis will remain the same for renal tuberculosis. Okay. BK virus we already discussed at the beginning. I told you it causes nephropathy in kidney transplant patients most commonly. How will you diagnose this? With the help of renal biopsy or PCR. Mostly PCR is recommended. Coming to Schistosoma hematobium. Schistosoma hematobium's life cycle we had already discussed in previous lecture. What happens here? There are 5 stages to this fluke in which this Cercaria penetrates the man through water. Whenever this man, suppose man went for swimming in the stagnant water where the Cercaria was surviving, it entered this man's system, went to the portal circulation. From portal circulation, it developed into the adult worm, into the liver. From there, it found its own habitat, which is the venous plexus to the particular organ. In case of hematobium, it is bladder. That is where it survives. Okay. Then it lays the eggs which are released in urine, and again it goes into the water. Again the cycle takes place on snails. But this, when this is happening, what are the manifestations that you can see? Can you feel foreign body sensation? Can you feel fever? What is one important finding in this case? What do you think? I had told you in the beginning, in Egypt there was a tribe which believed that there is this Schistosoma hematobium is also named after male menstrual syndrome because it causes hematuria in male patients, right? Okay. But what is grave here? This thing can also lead to bladder cancer. Okay, that is why you need urgent treatment for this. How do you diagnose this? Based on the egg found in urine sample. How will the egg look? It looks like this, oval shape, and the operculum is there. In the spine you could see in the middle. Okay, in case of Japonicum and Mansoni, what was it? The spine was placed where? Laterally. Okay, and in case of Mansoni, the egg was smaller in size. Was it Japonicum or was it Mansoni? Japonicum. So in case of Mansoni, it was placed laterally. Everything else remains the same. You have to write about histopathology. You can go for antibody detection by ELISA. You can go for antigen detection. You can perform PCR. What is the treatment of choice? Praziquantel. Okay. This is a nematode which is known to attack kidneys. It is also known by the name of giant kidney worm. Okay, this is how it looks. It is transferring to kidney via intestine. Urinary obstruction could be there because of its growth. Okay, again you will find this egg, particular egg, which contains the embryo and thick covering shell like this, which is ridged in between. Okay, this is about parasites. Coming to Trichomonas vaginalis, which is also implicated in sexually transmitted diseases. One of the common causes of vulvovaginitis. What will you see in this case? You will see a trophozoite in urine sample. Okay. About Candida, again, Candida is a very common finding. How will you find Candida in the urine sample? You will see budding yeast cells in the urine sample, right? Okay. Candiduria has to be treated in which kind of patients? Will you treat in all the patients? Because Candida is also commonly found in the UTI. Not necessarily that it is causing a disease. When there are symptoms, first prerequisite is that it has to be a symptomatic cystitis. We are not talking about urethritis. We are talking about cystitis. Then we are talking about pyelonephritis. Pyelonephritis, you don't even have to think. If it is Candida there, you have to know what is the reason and treat it. Then in case of immunocompromised or neutropenic patients, every pathogen, every organism becomes a pathogen when there is immunosuppression. So in these patients, you have to treat the Candida. Patients who are undergoing urological manipulation, undergoing urological instrumentation, right? Or if there is bladder obstruction and critically ill patients and lower birth weight infants. Okay, these are the people in which and conditions in which you have to treat the Candiduria. Otherwise, it does not require or justify any treatment. Okay, this was about UTIs in general. What did you understand so far? You understood that UTI is classified based on two things. First is source of infection. It could be hospital acquired, it could be community acquired, it could be lower UTI, upper UTI. In case of upper UTI, hematogenous spread is there. There are fungal, viral, parasitical and bacterial causes. Bacterial causes, to name few, what is the most common cause? Uropathogenic E. coli. Then there is Klebsiella. Then there is Protea group. Acinetobacter, Pseudomonas are seen mostly where? Catheter associated UTI. Okay. And what are common gram-positive organisms? Staphylococcus aureus, Enterococcus, Streptococcus agalacti and Saprophyticus in reproductive age females, and one cons, Staphylococcus epidermidis. Okay. Then in virus, what is there? BK virus and adenovirus. BK virus is commonly seen where? Transplantations. Okay. Fungus, Candida. What else is remaining? Parasites. Schistosoma, hematobium and Trichomonas and Dictophyme. Okay. Okay. What is the laboratory diagnosis? How will you go up ahead up? What will you do? You will take which sample? Urine sample. Can you take suprapubic urine aspirate? If you cannot collect urine sample, for example, in case of infants, we perform suprapubic aspiration of urine, which is done by whom? Experts. Okay. So that's how you can take the sample. In admitted patients also, there are certain ways to take samples. For example, you can take in and out catheter, you can use condom catheters in which you just attach it and take the urine sample and discard it. Okay, in case of immobilized patients, right? or in case of patients who are cooperative, who can provide the sample to you, you have to always catch the midstream catch urine after cleaning the area. If you're not cleaning it, there is a chance of contamination. है ना? Okay. Then what will you do in the laboratory? You will perform a wet mount. In wet mount, what can you observe? You can observe pus cells, you can observe bacterium. In case of Candida, you can observe budding yeast cells. In case of parasites, you can observe trophozoites, right? What happens in case of virus? Can you observe virus in the wet mount? My question was, can you observe a virus in the wet mount? No. For that, what can you perform? You can go for histopathological findings or through biopsy, or you can go for PCR, polymerase chain reaction, right? Okay. That was about UTI. Can you tell me the protective defense mechanism in the body? Two kinds, urine, acidic urine and acidic urine, high osmolarity, that is mucosal. What about urine? Flow, okay, and certain enzymes that cannot lead, that leads to the inhibition of growth of organism. What about mucosal? IgA releases. Then Tom Horsfall protein, which is there in the kidney, which inhibits the growth of uroepithelial adhesion in uropathogenic E. coli, and apopolysaccharide are inducing some growth of certain factors that lead to inhibition of organism. Okay, these are all defensive mechanisms. What are the predisposing factors? Predisposing factors: age, gender, female sex, why? Short urethra, and close proximity to anus. What do males have that females don't have? Prostatic zinc secretions, long urethra, and functional and structural obstruction of urinary tract. Obstruction कैसे होगा? Stones, tumors, abscesses, okay, strictures. Functional कैसे होगा? Neurogenic bladder in case of spinal injury. Okay, all these things will relate to UTI. Okay, that was about urinary tract syndrome. Sexually transmitted diseases means contagious diseases which are communicable diseases which are transmitted sexually. So, based on the manifestations that they produce, certain diseases that produce genito-ulcer lesions. तो हम लोग उसको differentiate करके, there are 5 important diseases that we are going to study that will have genito-ulcer lesions, and certain lesions that will cause infections in female genital tract and male genital tract. So this will be different than the lesions that are produced on the skin. This is internal. This will give certain different manifestations of inflammation that you can see. Okay, and certain agents that can cause systemic infections. What are these systemic infections? You already have studied so much about it: HIV, hepatitis B and C. Okay, so these are all without primary local invasions. You will directly see that they are causing systemic infections. Okay, coming to local manifestations means lesions on the genital tract in both the sexes. What are these? Genito-ulcerative lesions. There are 5 diseases that we'll study today. Okay, then we'll study urethritis. So urethritis can be classified based on the causative organism: Neisseria gonorrhoeae, gonorrheal, gonococcal urethritis, and those who are not caused by gonococcal, those are non-gonococcal urethritis. So what are these? Chlamydia trachomatis, ureaplasma, mycoplasma, herpes simplex, candida and trichomonas. Out of this, you just studied candida and trichomonas in UTI. We were discussing urethritis. These caused candida. These were caused by candida and trichomonas. In that, you have to remember another three, that is chlamydia trachomatis, herpes simplex and mycoplasma, ureaplasma and mycoplasma. Okay. Then local manifestation disease, genital tuberculosis we discussed. We discussed UTI, renal tuberculosis. Then there is something called as genital tuberculosis involving genital tract, and certain anorectal regions such as warts by human papilloma virus or proctitis caused by gonococcus and chlamydia. Okay, these are also common in both sexes. Now there are certain local manifestations which are common in only females because they have those organs, and only males because they have those organs. So what are these things? Vulvovaginitis, mucopurulent cervicitis, PID, pelvic inflammatory disease, okay, which will involve all this: endometrium, salpinx, ovaries, tubo-ovarian things, abscesses could be there, then peritoneum might get involved, then perihepatitis, which is also named as Fitzgerald disease. Okay, then there are gynecological surgeries which can also lead to infections in the female genital tract and infections during pregnancy or postpartum stage. These are also common in females only. And in males, what are the organs? Prostatitis, epididymis and orchitis. These are seen in males. Okay. We are not going to talk about systemic infections. You just have to remember that there is hepatitis B, C and HIV. Okay. Coming to genital ulcerative disease. When you talk about genital ulcerative disease, you see what is the character of this genital ulcer that is there. So when patient comes to you, you ask for pain. If it's painless, then what kind of lymphadenopathy is there? So today, you are going to study these 5 diseases. Over here, syphilis, you know that it is caused by Treponema pallidum. Genital ulcer is painless, single, indurated. Also, lymphadenopathy is also painless. Okay, bilateral lymphadenopathy. What is the incubation period? Up to 90 days. Okay. Then, genital herpes. This was studied in exanthems. So, just remember 2 to 7 days, not a very long incubation period. After the contact, you will have painful, multiple, bilateral, tiny vesicular ulcers and painful lymphadenopathy. Okay, chancroid. Again, how to remember? Here you know that Treponema pallidum is causing syphilis. Here you know that herpes simplex 1 and 2, most commonly 2 below the waist lesions, causing genital herpes. How will you remember here? Chancroid is caused by Haemophilus ducreyi bacterium. Okay. So here H is there, like chancroid. Just remember H for Haemophilus. Haemophilus ducreyi. Okay. Painful, soft, multiple, purulent, that bleeds easily, but don't confuse it with donovanosis. Donovanosis bleeds readily on touching. These ulcers bleed on touching. If it's given in the exam, then you're talking about donovanosis. Okay, there is the character. And in case of chancroid, what is there? Initially there is a painless lymphadenopathy which becomes painful markedly later. And in case of lymphogranuloma venereum, which is caused by which organism? Chlamydia trachomatis. Okay. This is painless, but lymphadenopathy is painful. Okay. In case of donovanosis, what is the causative organism? Klebsiella granulomatis. Okay. This is painless, but there is no lymphadenopathy. Where else have you studied about Donovan? Leishmania. So this person, Charles Donovan, he was the one who discovered Leishmania donovani. He was the one who discovered Donovan bodies in case of Klebsiella granulomatous infection, which you see in histopathological finding, which is a histopathological finding which you find in the cells, epithelial cells. What will you see? In monocytes, what will you see? Inclusion bodies caused by this Klebsiella. Okay, I'll tell you the key points only today. Okay, syphilis is transmitted how? Very good. How is syphilis transmitted? Sexually. Is there another way of in which syphilis might get transmitted? Through blood transfusion, can it get transmitted? Transplacently, can it get transfused, right? Also, syphilis is the thing which is capable of directly invading your mucosa. So that risk is always there. Okay. What are the stages of syphilis? There are certain stages: primary, latent, secondary, and tertiary. What happens in the primary stage? You will see this painless, indurated, single ulcer, right? Associated with painless lymphadenopathy. After certain weeks, these ulcers are healed. Patient, if left untreated, what will he develop? Secondary lesions on palms and hands and soles, okay, which gradually may lead to certain lesions, certain granulomatous lesions could be there in these cases if you leave them untreated. This also can transform into tertiary syphilis. What happens in tertiary syphilis? There is CNS involved, there is heart involvement. So if a person who had syphilis, tertiary syphilis, dies suddenly, sudden death can be there in case of syphilis because of aortic rupture. Okay. So what is happening here? Basically the big vessels are getting involved. This is how the syphilis progresses. In case of congenital syphilis, when there is transplacental transmission, what will happen? In case of, there are two stages, early and late syphilis. There is also a certain triad that we call in case of congenital late syphilis, which we call as Hutchinson's triad. What will you see in this triad? You will see mulberry molar teeth. There is overcrowding of teeth. Okay, sensory neural hearing loss will be there. Keratitis will be there in these children. That you call a congenital syphilis. Okay, now how do we diagnose syphilis? Syphilis is diagnosed based on two kind of tests: specific and non-specific test. Okay, why are we not using non-specific? Why are we not using specific test? Like, why are we even acquiring the non-specific test? Because specific test will involve dealing with the live organism, and we want to avoid that. But based on the prevalence in the society, the algorithm shifts. So syphilis when you're doing syphilis diagnosis, sometimes in case of high prevalence is there, we go for specific test first. Now what will non-specific test involve? There are certain tests called as VDRL, RPR and TRUST. Okay. In these tests, what you're using? You're using cardiolipin antigen. What is this cardiolipin antigen? When syphilis is attacking in your body, your epithelial cells will start releasing certain lipids. Okay. And your body will start making antibodies against these lipids. So there is presence of these non-specific IgM and IgG antibodies, which you will check. This is what we use in case of non-specific test. What are these non-specific tests? VDRL, RPR, you have to remember. In VDRL, we can also use the CSF sample. Okay. In RPR, we are using serum samples. Okay. VDRL requires microscope to observe flocculation between the antigen antibody, the visible clumping that is happening. We require microscope. In case of RPR, we can observe it through naked eyes. We do not require any microscope. Okay. In case of specific test, we are using treponemal antibodies. Okay. There are certain tests called as immobilization test, hemoagglutination test, okay, agglutination test. So you have to name them. The mechanism remains a little bit different for all these tests, but you just have to remember that we are using treponemal specific antibodies for these tests. Okay, this is how you diagnose the syphilis. How will you treat syphilis? Penicillin. Okay, that was about syphilis. Okay, what else? What was the next topic? Herpes. So you have studied herpes in the last class. What will you do in herpes? How do you diagnose a virus in the laboratory? You will perform PCR or cytopathological finding you'll go for, also based on the clinical description. There will be painful ulcerative lesions. What else will be there? Painful lymphadenopathy, right? Okay. What is the treatment of choice for herpes? Acyclovir. Okay. Out of these genito-ulcerative lesions, whatever you studied, out of them 4 were bacterium. 1 was virus. This virus was herpes virus. Other 4 was bacteria. Okay. Don't get confused. Okay. Then let's see what other local manifestations are seen in case of female tracts. We discussed about vulvovaginitis, mucopurulent, cervicitis and PID, right? Pelvic inflammatory disease. What happens in case of males? Prostatitis, balanitis and orchitis. Okay. What are common to both? Tuberculosis, genital tuberculosis. What else was there? Anogenital warts and lesions are caused by gonorrhea, chlamydia, herpes and human papilloma virus. Okay. Now, when you diagnose vulvovaginitis, there are 3 main causative organisms we are thinking about. One is fungus, candida. Second is bacterial vaginosis, which means imbalance in the bacterial flora of the vagina, and Trichomonas vaginalis. Okay, so whenever you are dealing with this, you have to think about these 3 things. How will you diagnose bacterial vaginosis? What is happening here basically, the lactobacillus, which is a good bacteria, it is reducing in number, and the bad bacterium, which are there but they are in controlled number, they are increasing. What are these bacterium? Mobilingus, Bacteroides, Prevotella, all these bacterium, they are increasing in number. So this imbalance is there. How is this imbalance happening? Because of pH disturbances. There is acidic pH in vagina which is controlling all this, right? To diagnose bacterial vaginosis, what will you use? There are 2 kinds of criteria. First is Amsel criteria and Nugent score. Nugent score is based on the number of bacterium, Mobilingus, Lactobacillus. Okay. If Lactobacillus are less in number, you will score 4 marks. It means very less in number, the high score. So the score depends. If the score is more than 7, you will say that the person has bacterial vaginosis. Okay. Are you getting anything without the PowerPoint? I'm just saying something. Are you understanding it without picture? हाँ, थोड़ा जोर से बोला करो. हाँ, आ रहा है. Okay. क्या बताया मैंने अभी न्यूटन स्कोर? Okay. ठीक है. This is about which thing, which manifestation, local manifestation? Bacterial vaginosis, not vaginitis, vaginosis. Okay. ठीक है. In all these cases, what do you have to do? What specimens will you take? You will take the swabs, you will run through in the laboratory. For these organisms, you require certain culture medium which are selective, right? In case of gonorrhea, which selective medium you are using? Thier-Martin medium. In Thier-Martin medium, what do you have? You have 4 kinds of antibiotics. How can you add an antibiotic to grow organism? You are growing this organism because you are not letting other organisms which are present in the tract to grow. So what are you adding to it? Vancomycin, colistin, nystatin and cotrimoxazole. Okay. All this you are adding to inhibit the growth of gram-positive, gram-negative, commonly found commensals and anaerobes and fungus. Okay, you are inhibiting the growth of all these organisms so that gonococcus grows if it is present in the tract. Okay, that's how you require the special selective media for the growth. Other than this, in case of chlamydia, specific nucleic acid amplification test is the diagnostics of choice in case of chlamydia. Okay, there are certain serovars that are implicating in genitourinary system that you will have to study. Other than this, solely based on clinical symptoms and clinical presumptive diagnosis, we further provide samples to the laboratory. Okay. What else can I teach you from this talk? I was talking about secondary stage of syphilis. I was talking about these mucocutaneous lesions who look like granulomatous lesions, but they are basically present in the warm moist areas externally. Okay. Also, there are certain mucosal erosions that you can see in case of secondary syphilis. Okay. This is about the congenital syphilis late stage. This is what I told you, Hutchinson's triad, mulberry molars, interstitial keratitis and deafness. Okay, this is how the Haemophilus ducreyi, painful genital ulceration in case of Haemophilus ducreyi will look. In gram staining, the Scocobacillus is there, and what kind of appearance can you see? You can see a pool of fish or railroad track appearance. This is very significant for Haemophilus ducreyi. Okay. Where you can culture it? You can culture it in the hemine enriched factors, hemine enriched blood agar. These are all not done in the general laboratories. These require special laboratories wherever these medias are available. Okay. Other than this, you can perform agglutination test or multiplex PCR assay because biochemical reactions are not observed in case of Haemophilus ducreyi. Okay. Then herpes genitalis, this vesicular rashes which are painful. Also the lymphadenopathy is painful. What can you see in case of cytopathology? These lesions. In case of GMSA preparation, you will see these intranuclear inclusions. Okay. You can go for viral antigen detection or viral DNA detection in PCR. Then LGV. LGV we talked about chlamydia, trachomatis, serovars. L1 to L3 are included in LGV. The lesion somewhat looks like this, painless papular ulcer or vesicle. Okay. Initially might be painless, but later the lymphadenopathy becomes painful. We can perform, in case of chlamydia, we can perform NAT, nucleic acid amplification test, okay. Donovanesis, I discussed that it was named after Charles Donovan, who found these specific Donovan bodies in case of chlamydia, in case of Klebsiella granulomatis. This was also known as Kellymatobacterium granulomatis in the past. Okay, this is how this beefy ulcer will look, and when you touch it, it will start bleeding. Okay. Also, in this disease, you will see some subcutaneous lesions, which will give you the idea that this might be lymphadenopathy. So, we call it pseudobuboes. Okay, that's not actually a lymph node involved. Okay. Urethritis we discussed, gonococcal and non-gonococcal. Non-gonococcal had which organisms? Chlamydia, ureaplasma and mycoplasma, and okay, there was this Fitzhugh-Curtis syndrome that I told you about in case of peritoneal inflammation, perihepatic inflammation. So this is a gonococcal side effect, gonococcal complication. Okay, whenever there is PID which is involving gonorrhea or chlamydia, this syndrome can come into the picture. Okay, that was about it. Trichomonas vaginalis, I told you, you will see the trophozoites in the samples. Similarly, in urethritis, because of trichomonas in urine sample, you will see the trophozoites. Tuberculosis, anorectal lesions, you know what are the causative organisms. These are warts that you can see because of HPV. And vulvovaginitis we were discussing. I told you there could be Candida albicans or Trichomonas vaginalis or bacterial vaginosis. Bacterial vaginosis we discussed. In what should be the typical symptom in these cases? You have to know that. In case of vaginitis, there will be thick curdy discharge with intense itching. In case of trichomonal vaginitis, there will be profuse purulent discharge with itching. But in case of bacterial vaginosis, there will also be a smell, fishy smell. Okay. In microscopy, what will you see in candidiasis? Leukocytes, epithelial cells and budding yeast cells with pseudohyphae. If there is pseudohyphae, what does it tell you? That this infection is active. Okay. And in case of trichomonal vaginitis, you will see leukocytes or trophozoites. And bacterial vaginosis, clue cells are seen. What is clue cell? Clue cell is when the normal epithelium is loaded with the bacterial so that it loses its shape, right? And you can see that under the microscope, how a normal epithelial cell looks and how a clue cell looks. Okay, this is how a clue cell will look. This is a normal cell, this is normal epithelial cell, but this is a clue cell. Okay, we were discussing about Nugent's score. Nugent's score, I told you, it depends upon Gardnerella, Mobilingus and Lactobacilli. Lactobacilli goes down, score goes up. Gardnerella and Vaginalis, Mobilingus, score goes up. Count goes up, score goes up. So, if it's more than 7 or equal to 7, it means it is diagnosis of bacterial vaginosis. Other than this, there is Amsel's criteria. What happens in Amsel's criteria? Out of these 4, 3 must be present. First is clue cell should be present, vaginal pH should be more than 4.5. It means basic pH. It's going towards a basic pH, which was acidic. Then 10% solution of KOH will give distinct fishy odor when mixed with the vaginal secretions. This is positive whiff test, or also a vaginal homogeneous discharge which is thin and white in color, white to grey in color. Okay. Out of these 4, if 3 are present, it means bacterial vaginosis is there. Okay, this was about bacterial vaginosis. Candidiasis, I don't need to discuss. You know how it is diagnosed in the laboratory. What is the treatment? Same goes with the mucopurulent cervicitis. PID, I told you it could be because of sexually transmitted or due to invasive intrauterine procedures. So it could be because of intervention in the hospital, the secondary PID. What is the etiology? When we are discussing about Fitz syndrome, we were talking about gonorrhea and Neisseria. What are other rare causes? Mycoplasma, anaerobes, E. coli, Haemophilus influenza, group B streptococci, or disseminated infections such as TB or staphylococcal infections from other primary site in the body. This can lead to PID. Okay, this is all about group B streptococcal infections. I told you, if it's in pregnancy, if the mother has colonization of group B streptococcus, which is Streptococcus agalacti, it should be treated, it should be surveilled so that you could prevent the infection in infants.